Thank you for being here and joining us today. Michael is new to me, only 7 weeks now, but he's a hard act to follow, very inspirational. And I think he's done a great job framing the opportunity that we all have to unlock the power of commerce media and to reach consumers in more meaningful ways as they go through their shopping journey. I'm going to try today to break down a little bit more of the detail underneath that. How Criteo is investing and using AI today differently than it did when it started. Criteo is known for using AI, mostly machine learning, at its advent because it started as a recommendation engine. At the time, it was a very small startup in Paris, and we were doing video recommendation, which of course has become incredibly popular today, video and audio and other content. It happened to be that that algorithm was incredibly powerful for driving product recommendations, which was the advent to getting Criteo into the retail space, the invention of retargeting, which we became a category leader for, and all the way forward to today, where now we're opening up an entirely new frontier in commerce media. So AI is nothing new to Criteo. But it's important to give you a little bit more details about how we use it and how we partner with you to use it for good. So let me start by going back to a story that I found interesting, and it's only a year and a half old, but Google had a very famous internal memo leak in May of 2023, which basically proclaimed that we have no moat. Google was very, very concerned about losing its competitive edge at the time to OpenAI and a little tiny app called ChatGPT, which had really burst onto the scene and was gaining a lot of consumer favor. At the time, Google's focus was much more about the quality of its model outputs, not measuring up to GPT. GPT had, in effect, run around one of the biggest tech companies on the planet with something that performed better to provide context to consumers that were using it. What was lost in this memo was that the consumer itself was voting for ChatGPT as a better way to discover meaning and commerce and content than they were using search for. So a lot has changed since that year and a half passed by. Even in this last holiday period, I want to say that chat-driven search grew by 1,300%. So consumers are very quickly adopting AI. And the reason that's important is because no matter what sources are used data-wise to pre-train a model, like GPT or like Gemini, you still have the need to reinforce that learning for continual intelligence. And that depends on consumer engagement entirely. So all of you and all of the customers that you serve, all the prospects that you're trying to win, and the engagement they have with AI is every bit as important as the AI that's pre-trained on data which already exists. So I'm going to go a little bit further on that with some additional information. Here you see that open source has really continued to explode since that memo back in 2023. You have the aforementioned search behaviors changing very quickly. I want to say by last measure, Google search had declined 6 points in a year. Okay, that's a huge amount of people that are being retrained on discovery through AI. But that's not all. Models are being built incredibly fast by independent firms. In our home country, where we're headquartered, in France, Mistral built a model, a large model, in 4 months. DeepSeek, of course, which I think everyone here is familiar with, and hopefully many of you have used it, was built in almost the same time on a very scant amount of infrastructure from what OpenAI and Meta and Google had to do to build their models. Small labs are moving very, very quickly, and it's not just modeling that we're talking about. It's also 70,000 startups, roughly, that are doing AI work in building wrappers around those models to provide value. more vertically integrated solutions, different ways of approaching and accessing that modalities for consumers to get at that model more easily and in fresh and normal feeling ways, something that's important to all of us as consumers, are happening like that. And the reason for that is because building an agent today is something that you can do with products like N8N on a weekend. Or building a front end is something that you can do in a couple of hours with Lovable. Okay, so these are fundamentally changing the way that we work, and it's important just to give some context for how we're thinking about the problem. Now, let me build on that just a tiny bit further before I go into Criteo's role in the ecosystem and what we're doing with AI together with you all. First of all, behind me here on the left-hand side, costs are going to about zero. As I mentioned, the wrapper companies and those 70,000 startups are really advancing quickly because it's incredibly cheap to get to model outputs and build a great business on that. So you see that innovation accelerating in the middle there. That is reflective of an environment that I have not seen in my career, and I'd be willing to bet that anyone in this room has not seen the rate of change that we're seeing today ever before. So at the same time, that provides opportunity to all of us. It means that the silos of big tech that were really owning consumer relationships and things like search, which really spoke to consumerism and commerce, are beginning to break down. That means more opportunities for the rest of the world and our partners. Now, we partner with all of the big tech firms as well. Maybe not Amazon. I don't think we partner with Amazon. They're the only difference. But what we do is we want to make sure that there's a democratization of commerce media and commerce marketing. So it can't all be tied to Meta. It can't all be tied to Google. It can't all be tied to Amazon. And that creates massive opportunity for everyone in this room. So I'm just going to pause on the zero cost notion because I think it's important to let that sink in. While costs go to zero and while competition is rising as quickly as it is, it's important to ask fundamental questions about how you're building your business to stand out. How will you stand out against this liege of new companies that's coming fast, building things at very low cost, and speaking to consumers which you care about in new ways? This is something Criteo feels and works on to solving every single day with our partners. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why. Why would Criteo be an important decision to make as an AI partner, not just a partner for marketing or for selling retail media? There's a couple of things here. One is that our use of AI is specifically built to service the domain of commerce. Whether you're selling media or whether you're buying growth, does not matter. Everything we do with AI is underpinning those workflows and all the applications that we build. Michael talked about one earlier, which we're really excited about. I personally am excited about, called Commerce Go, making it very easy to buy outcomes from the stage that we as consumers might be laid back and casually browsing a feed and introduced to a product for the first time, versus when we might be qualifying and validating, is that the right product for me? Do I really want that product? Is it the right price? Should I be choosing a different model? All the way down to when I choose a retailer or a marketplace that serves me best, the place that might stock the right thing, the place that might have a better return policy, the place that's going to treat my loyalty in a different way. Those things are nonlinear things in today's channel world, and we're definitely breaking those down because of our domain-specific expertise and our ability to model commerce across all the channels that Michael was talking about. Obviously, breaking down the silo between retail media and performance media means that you have to think without thinking channels first, without thinking about new formats. You need to think about that customer journey, that shopper journey, and connecting the dots. And the only way to do that is with well-informed and trained AI. So now, I mentioned before, how do you make it uniquely yours? Well, that's actually a lot simpler than it sounds on the surface. The relationships you have with your customers and the prospects that you seek is equally important to training that foundation model. So getting data back from the interactions and the engagements I might have with any help bot is vital to reinforcement learning of models. You have a lot more power than you might think based on the data that you already own, but more importantly, the relationships that you already have. And working with Criteo, we can actually build that into a custom advantage for everyone in this room. Choosing an AI partner is a lot like choosing your best new employee, or maybe a perfect teammate for playing the sport that you love. There are certain things that you have to ask yourself about the companies that you're working with, and I've just laid out a few of those for consideration. Did that person, your perfect employee, have vertical knowledge? Did that person bring information with them, context from years of experience? Is that person able to be agile and quick in terms of turning that knowledge into context, which can turn into dollars in business? All those things really must be true when you're talking about AI today. Without that, you have an empty partnership and something that won't actually get you to growth. So let me tell you why Criteo pretty much fits the bill of a good partner. First of all, we're an open platform, an open company. Many of you may not know, but we regularly publish large data sets for the use of everyone in this room and our entire ecosystem globally. We recently published a 100 million row data set, which allows people to look at how Chrome's Privacy Sandbox is working for addressability. That's something we led the way in a year and a half ago, and now we're making that knowledge available to everyone here. You can put your data scientists on it, you can run your experiments on it, you can do your test and learn, and you can see on the back of our research how Privacy Sandbox will work for you in a privacy-protecting way for the customers that you care about or the prospects that you seek. The second thing is we've got a fantastic crew in our AI lab. We call it CALE, the Criteo AI Lab. That's 120 of the world's best researchers and the world's best creators of research to tech transfer to application. We have published over 210 papers. We really punch high above our weight class in terms of writing papers that other researchers regularly consume. And I know this because I'm friends with all of these guys in the different labs, and they'll tell me, wow, your team wrote a great paper on whatever the topic was, balancing the economics of data versus what someone might get back. That's something really important for us. Again, it's how we're opening ourselves to you and everyone in this room. Okay, so before we get to a little bit more about what Criteo does in terms of training AI, I wanted to talk about things that I think are probably valuable for you to ask yourselves before you choose a partner, because this is another big problem with AI. It's moving so fast. I am a regular consumer of it. I even wrote an agent just to inform me about what was changing day over day with AI, okay? And even that I'm not able to keep up because it's so voluminous. So you have to ask yourself some fundamental questions from a product perspective on how you're going to invest to be successful. Otherwise, it's easy to get caught up with the herd, and that's not going to be the way to win this battle. The rate of change is too quick. So how far is your idea with AI, your experiment with AI, your initiative with AI going to scale? Is it a big enough idea? Are you focusing those valuable resources of thought and people on it? What makes it valuable to you? What's it going to do for your business? How is it really going to return speed or agility in your business, the winning of more customers, the keeping them longer, and so on and so forth? What's your moat? What's the cost of getting to that moat? How are you going to actually do something that's sustainable over term? And what is going to stand out from those 70,000 startups that I called out earlier? So by answering these things and by auditing all of what you might be thinking about in investing in AI, you will bring better ideas to us, and we will help bring more value back to you. It's easy to get distracted. My word and call to action would be don't. Focus on the fundamentals. I've laid them out for you. So our role is I mentioned addressability earlier. We took a leading position in the market on addressability for performance marketing. Now we're really moving to a leading position on co-training AI. And data distribution really sets us apart. And I wanted to get to some of the facts on that. To build a foundation model for commerce, which is different and lasts, like that last slide that I saw you, is durable and has scale, you have to start with the point of purchase. Okay, Michael talked a little bit about our anchoring to commerce, whether that storefront sits in the feed, or whether that storefront sits on a retailer's site, or whether it sits in a PLA, in a product listing ad that we ship on one of the 1,000 publishers we're directly integrated with, does not matter. That data which comes from the point of commerce and the point of transaction, and that data which comes from observing user behavior before it happens, and indeed after it happens through hopefully years of loyalty on the data sharing we do, makes for an incredibly rich data set for training AI. Okay, so where does it come from? I mentioned 225 retailers a little bit earlier. It also comes from 19,000 direct-to-consumer brands that we've worked with for many, many years. So we're observing trillions of shopping journeys, and we're logging those events after anonymizing them. So obviously we can create great inference and prediction, not about videos anymore, but what product is most likely to be discoverable in a mindset when you're casually moving from one point to the other and going to work watching TikTok, or when you're in your living room leaned back watching your connected television, or when you might be on the retailer of your choice doing a search for a product. It's only possible if you have that data. And then on top of that, we work with some of the best agencies in the world, 1,500 agencies that bring data of their own and bring inference of their own. So all of that really adds up, including those publishers I mentioned, to about $4.5 billion of media spend. And that, of course, is also something that can be observed. What happens in the auction? What happens in bidding? Where are things dense? What products are moving through? Now, by correlating product, user, location, and ad set data, you have an incredible inference engine. And that's how we get to the predictions that we do get to and make a better product user connection. Okay, you can't do this unless you have an incredible infrastructure to hold it up. So another thing to emphasize about Criteo that I think few people know, but I like to talk about it because I'm a nerd, I'm a product guy, is that we run one of the world's most scaled infrastructures to make this work. So you're talking in terms of scale. 1 trillion transactions or bids are laid out a day by our engine. We are making over 120 billion predictions every single day, whether we're predicting a perfect audience match, we're predicting a better product recommendation, we're predicting what to display in a certain creative. Those are all happening at incredible scale. And of course, we're personalizing a ton of ads. So for an advertisement to actually work, to perform for you, to get you the growth that you want, or actually to be sold better, if you're a seller of commerce media, you've got to make sure that it speaks to a consumer. We all know that we ignore ads. If we're in the wrong mindset, the wrong location, it doesn't work. So basically these three things together illustrate that we have those bases covered. So look, I've talked a lot about the numbers. I've also said that co-training is the unlock for competitive AI and a path for building lasting, durable intelligence. In short, and to sum it up, our job is to build the commerce model that leads us into the future, and our partnership should be about making sure that that model never falls down in terms of becoming fresh and more relevant at each turn of the flywheel that Michael laid out for you. Okay, so final thoughts. One is, the days of the funnel are largely over. I already mentioned this idea of channel planning, of working with one platform, trying to tie measurement together, getting the ROAS out, getting the lift of sale. That's over. It's over for a couple of different reasons. One, it's ineffective and it's almost impossible to track deterministically. The other is that's not the way people want to be engaged anymore. They don't want to be carpet bombed in the feed when they're in TikTok and then go see the same thing in Instagram and then go see the same thing on their favorite site on the open web. They don't want that. That's not the way we want to be engaged as human beings when we're going through those commerce journeys. So the funnel is dead, or it's dying. It's still a popular organizing principle, but it doesn't really work for the modern consumer journey. And I've sort of laid that out on the right-hand side here. You can see all those different paths that go between Reddit and apps and so forth. I want to give you a quick illustration before I'm finished here because I'm over time. And that is, this is my journey. This is my latest journey. I'm a big Dyson vacuum guy. Anyone have a Dyson vacuum in here? No one? Literally only a couple. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, I'm a weirdo for that. I love Dyson vacuums. Okay. But Dyson is an interesting brand because it makes hair care and beauty maintenance products. It also happens to be making a very high-end headphone today. Okay, so I had to discover Dyson's headphone, not because of the marketing that they did with me in email or otherwise. I had to discover it because they were smart enough to infer that I might be interested in something that went with my loyalty to their vacuum. And they did that on Instagram. Something that we're really good at these days is what we call discovery advertising. That's a new thing for Criteo, and that's finding people like me who would be open to a brand's introduction of a product. That product found me. I didn't go looking for that product. In effect, as Michael said, I'm shopping all the time. I just didn't know it. And if you go down that particular buyer journey, which is uniquely mine, you will see I had to decide, because that's an expensive headphone, is that the right thing for me to buy? How does that compare to my Apple AirPod Max? Should I get it because it's a cool color? Where am I going to buy it? And so on and so forth. This is what I'm talking about trillions of times over. So by working with Criteo, by unleashing the power of a commerce foundation model, and by co-training it together safely and securely with your data so that the outputs of that model will speak to everyone you want to engage or everyone you're trying to sell media to feels validated, is something that we want to do together with you. So today you'll hear more from other distinguished guests about how Criteo is going about this, but I'm sharing a little bit about the product approach and would welcome any conversation you'd like to have with me about AI afterwards. Thank you so much for your time and for hosting us.